So Kamala Harris, she had a pretty big moment during the debates, and the debates which happened. It was the second night of debate with Joe Biden, and Bernie Sanders was there, Kirsten Gillibrand, a bunch of other people. So Kamala Harris, she went after Joe Biden for being anti-busing. So he was against busing. So against segregated busing in the South when he was senator in the 70s. I'd say, yeah. So he started when he was I think it was 1973. I think Joe Biden started, and he started in the Senate. He was in the Senate until 2009, and he was against busing in the segregated South, and Kamala Harris called him out for that, and she did a very good job of calling him out for that. I considered her to be one of the big winners because she did that. All the polls definitely show that as well. However, Kamala Harris has flip-flopped once again on this issue. Well, not once again on this issue, but she's flip-flopped on another issue. But on this one, it's very surprising considering how passionately she was arguing in favor. Obviously, well, arguing against Joe Biden, but obviously talking about how he should have been in favor of busing, and he claimed that he wasn't against it, and that he was only against it because of going through the Department of Education. I don't know, but Biden was constantly deflecting throughout that debate, so he did a horrible job, and Harris definitely got on him, but she has flip-flopped on this one a little bit, and I wanted to give you the details on that. So this is an article in the Chicago Tribune. It's actually through Associated Press, but I'm reading this one from the Chicago Tribune, and it's titled, "Senator Kamala Harris says busing should be considered, but not federally mandated." So, reading from the main article, that was the headline. Reading from the main article, it says, Senator Kamala Harris said Wednesday that busing students should be considered by school districts trying to desegregate their locations, not the federal mandate she appeared to support in poignantly criticizing rival Democratic presidential candidate Joe Biden last week. Harris had a breakthrough moment at the candidates' first debate when she criticized Biden for his opposition to mandatory busing when he was a senator in the 1970s. Harris said she benefited from busing as an elementary school student in Berkeley, California in the early 1970s. That's where the federal government must step in, Harris said, looking at Biden and winning a burst of applause from the auditorium in Miami. On Wednesday, though, Harris characterized busing as a choice local school districts have, not the responsibility of the federal government. Busing, while not central to the Democratic primary, has become a proxy issue for the debate between Biden and Harris over race, as well as broader questions about the 76-year-old former vice president is out of step with his party. After a Democratic Party picnic Wednesday in West Des Moines, I guess that's Iowa, yes. Harris was asked by reporters whether she supports federally mandated busing. Quoting her, it says, "I think of busing as being in the toolbox of what is available and what can be used for the goal of desegregating America's schools," she responded. Asked to clarify whether she supports federally mandated busing, she replied, "I believe that any tool that is in the toolbox should be considered by a school district." In a tweet Wednesday, Biden Deputy Campaign Manager Kate Bedingfield knocked Harris for her response, writing, "It's disappointing that Senator Harris chose to distort Vice President Biden's position on busing, particularly now that she is tying herself in knots trying not to answer the very question she posed to him." Harris's comments Wednesday were far from the indictment she delivered during the debate last week. Under attack on the debate stage, Biden appeared stunned and dismissed Harris's comments as a mischaracterization of his positions. He has notably begun his remarks to fundraisers by talking about how civil rights spurred his entry into public life more than 45 years ago. To be sure, Biden's record on busing is complicated. Biden has insisted he only opposed busing ordered by the Federal Education Department. So what is that? Department of Education, and said allowing local governments and school districts to implement busing was, quote, one of the things I argued for at the time. During an appearance at a conference last week in Chicago, Biden told the audience he never, ever opposed voluntary busing. But Biden was an outspoken opponent of federally mandated busing in the 1970s and 80s, sponsoring a congressional measure that would have limited funding for federal busing efforts. The issue spilled into Iowa as Harris and Biden returned Wednesday for the first time since the debate. Both will need some success in Iowa's leadoff nominating caucuses to build momentum heading into South Carolina, the first Southern primary, where they are vying aggressively for a robust African-American voting bloc. Biden and Harris also have been aggressively courting members of the Congressional Black Caucus, with Harris edging Biden in endorsements, picking up support from Representatives Bobby Rush of Illinois and Frederica Wilson of Florida. Biden last week landed the support of popular Atlanta Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms. In Iowa, where African Americans are a small minority, endorsements from black leaders are magnified. Harris got the backing of two popular black ministers after her debate performance last week. Appearing Wednesday in Waterloo, Iowa's most densely African American city, Biden received the backing of one of the city's most influential black ministers. Yeah, so the debate of busing and federally mandated, whether it's federally mandated or it's, should be considered by the schools. I think, listen, I don't obviously agree with the Biden campaign or, Biden's campaign, just Biden in general, because they're obviously centrist establishment assholes, but the spokesperson for Joe Biden was correct. And let me read her quote again. It says, "It's disappointing that Senator Harris chose to distort Vice President Biden's position on busing." I don't think that's what happened, but that's what she's saying. I'm just reading it. But this next part is important. It says, "Particularly now that she is tying herself in knots trying not to answer the very question she posed to him." So that's true. So the first part is not true because she didn't. I don't think that she mischaracterized his position. I think Biden responded by flailing and trying to deflect and trying to actually kind of restate his position and make it seem as if it's like this when it's not the way he thinks that Harris put it. But that second part is definitely true. She is tying herself in knots and trying not to answer the very question that she posed to him. Now, you would think she would support federally mandated busing. And for some reason, now she's coming out against it, even though she said she was in favor of it and attacked Biden for being against it. So what's the deal? I don't understand. Did you talk to one of your strategists, or did you talk to the Democrats? The Democrats in your party and the people that endorsed you. I mean, obviously somebody changed your opinion, or you just decided to change your own opinion because you're talking to people in Iowa. That's also another factor that should be considered, because as it was stated in this article, majority of people in Iowa are not black, and compared to other states, I think Mississippi is the most heavily populated black state with African Americans, black people. I believe it's Mississippi. As they said before, South Carolina is also very heavily is also a big state for getting black voters. I think they may be somewhere in the top 5 in most heavily populated black states. So yeah, Mississippi, South Carolina. Maybe Alabama. Probably not Alabama. I don't know, because obviously Alabama has a lot of they have a lot of kind of right wing, probably a lot of KKK white segregationists there too. I wouldn't be surprised, obviously. But yeah, maybe Alabama too. But different states in the South. Obviously, the South is going to be very popular for obviously black voters. That was somewhere that Bernie Sanders didn't do too well. So we'll see what happens with that. But as far as these positions that Harris is taking and the position that Biden took, I mean, they're opportunistic. They're as usual, opportunistic positions that these opportunistic politicians are taking because they know it's not smart for them to be advocating too much in favor of positions that white voters wouldn't support. And they're like, they're taking these positions to appease those white voters so that those people don't call them like, oh, you're too pro-black and you don't care about white people and you're anti-white or some bullshit like that. So especially when it comes to, a woman of color such as Kamala Harris, she's half Indian, half Jamaican, which is considered black. But she is a woman of color, but she doesn't want to pander that much to the black community. But ultimately, she probably will end up getting a lot of their votes because she's one of the only people in this race who's black. Other than Cory Booker, as far as the major candidates, she is pretty much the only other black candidate running. I think there's maybe one other person, but I don't think they were even in the debate. They didn't qualify for the debate. So I don't know who they are. But yeah, so I mean, this is how politicians are. You can't trust them to take any kind of consistent position on these kind of debates. 1 second they're going to be debating in favor of it. Next second they're going to go to another audience and they're going to be saying something completely different. I've talked about this before, but unfortunately this is the way it is. They always change their positions based on which crowd they're talking to because they know they can't piss off anybody too much or else they're not going to be able to recover from that later on when they give a whole different position. So again, like I've said before about Joe Biden, I might have said it about other candidates too, but these are always candidates that they always try and check, okay, which side should I go? Should I go on this side or should I go on that side? Which position should I take? Which one is most feasible to not only my campaign, but is also tolerable among the, people that are voting for me in that specific state, and it's just, you can't trust these people. This is not something that Bernie Sanders does. Bernie Sanders maintains his policy positions and his ideas as consistent, as much as possible. And he's always consistent. And he does not stray away as far as what I know. Everything that I've seen from Bernie Sanders, even in 2016, he never strayed away from this. He always maintained his he always maintained his policies, and he stuck to his principles because he knew that if he's going to sound one way to one crowd or one debate or one town hall, and he sounds completely different somewhere else, and he's going to end up looking like an idiot. And that's why he's hated by the establishment, because the establishment people out there and the strategists out there, they want you to cater to specific audiences. And even with the existence of technology, cell phones, smartphones, people, taking pictures of you, taking videos of you, no matter what you do, even when you do those things. So even when those politicians get caught get caught in the crosshairs of technology, essentially, and they're caught saying something that, they shouldn't be saying because they said something completely different before that, or just not, or just saying something that they shouldn't be saying in general. But when they get caught doing that stuff, it doesn't really seem like they care, even if they are caught. And it's honestly amazing to me. I think it's one of two things. Either they just think like, okay, whatever, I don't care, and I'll just sound different one place and I'll sound another way a different place. To them, it doesn't matter. In that regard, I don't think it matters. But and then the other thing I think is, I just think, honestly, I think that they assume that the American people are stupid. It has to be one of those two things. Either you just don't give a shit, or you think people are stupid enough to just buy into whatever you're going to say, and that you can convince them the next time you are in a debate or you're meeting people in a town hall or shaking hands and, doing some sort of event where you're talking to people and they ask you, I think these politicians, honestly, the unprincipled politicians and the opportunistic ones, I think they feel like they can get away with these things because they can just say whatever and everybody's going to believe them. They're just going to believe them and they're going to buy into whatever bullshit they put out there because they're that crafty with their talking points. And I just don't think they can get caught. That, I don't know. It's hard to tell, but that's, what else could it really be? Honestly, it's kind of hard to tell because you don't see them obviously saying like, oh yeah, well no, these people are idiots and I can just say whatever I want. But it's not. These politicians know what they're doing, and it doesn't ultimately come down to being principled, and it doesn't come down to being, being truthful and being honest. It just comes down to pleasing whatever specific base or constituency or crowd or whatever you're talking to, or audience or state or city or town, whatever. It just depends who you're talking to. And that's why when they're talking to people in cable news and on TV and stuff, so like some sort of pundit type show where they're brought on and asking questions, answering questions, they always have to dance around those questions, and they always have to dance around how they articulate things and how they put things, because they know that these journalists, who a lot of them are obviously just giving them softball questions anyway, but they know they have to dance around those questions as much as possible, or else they're going to get caught with their hand in the cookie jar again. And they know they can't have that. They know they can't deal with that. So it's ultimately a position that it's also everything with these politicians is ultimately taking a position of least resistance and least controversy, because if they go into that controversy, then they can't get out of it, and for them it's going to be like getting out of quicksand, honestly, and they know this. And even somebody like me knows this, but that doesn't mean I support them, because I know that as much as they're going to be getting themselves in trouble by saying things that maybe aren't popular, or maybe aren't things that people want to hear sometimes, whether or not it's popular, regardless of that whole that whole dynamic. But they're going to say things that are going to please the people that are going to criticize them the least. And when it comes to that's why they want to get the support of the donors so badly, and the corporate donors, and want to do fundraisers and suck up to the rich so much, because they know that as long as they can say the things that those people want, then they could get their money. Whereas the regular people out there, the people that are donating to somebody like Bernie Sanders, who is principled, those people, they don't care about them, because those people are not giving them as much money as those corporate donors are. And they only love the corporate donors for their money. And that's all they care about, because it's all about greed, and it's all about getting enough money in your campaign coffers so that you can have enough money to spend on attack ads and spend on traveling to different states, and then spouting more of your bullshit, in this case with Biden and Kamala Harris and all those candidates, spouting your bullshit that people are going to believe, just like I said before, talking to a certain audience and just saying to them whatever they want to hear, basically, and then going to another state and saying something completely different. And that's what it comes down to.